And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network dedicated to covering IU women's basketball. This is our 183rd episode recorded on the evening of Wednesday, January 14th, 2026. I'm your host, Kathy Amos, joined by my co-host, Jeff Marlow. And today we'll be talking about three different games from the Indiana Hoosiers, all three of them losses. With the loss to Nebraska on the road, 73-78, and then losses at home to Iowa, 53-56, and then tonight, 63-82 to Washington. With those three losses, that now takes their overall record to 11-8, and they are still winless in conference at 0-6. So we will be highlighting 0-7. Yeah, oopsies. I didn't update my own numbers. So we will be looking at those three losses tonight. We will not be highlighting our next opponents like we usually do because they are actually off for over a week. But before we jump into the three games, we'll talk about our banner moment like we usually do. So our Hoosier Proud banner moment, Jeff, for me is I'm going back to the Iowa game. So the Indiana came out really hot in that game. They actually pulled ahead by 10, 12-2 on a jumper at the elbow from Chusky. With about 3:13 to play in the first quarter. The Hawkeyes then would go on to score just 2 field goals in that first period, and IU went up 20-8 in the first quarter. However, Iowa came back within as few as 6 with 2:42 left in the second. However, we had back-to-back buckets again from Chusky, including a transition triple that put the Hoosiers back up double digits at half. Unfortunately, we just didn't have a really good third quarter, which we'll get into, but they didn't give up. And in that fourth quarter, we had an and one by redshirt sophomore Lene Beaumont with about 2:53 remaining. So they actually were back on top 50-48. But however, they ended up going scoreless after that until the final seconds with a desperation three-pointer from Nevaeh Caffey. So I just wanted to highlight a few things from that game because I thought in terms of conference play, that was probably one of their better games. They just really fell off in that third quarter. But at least, they showed a lot of heart in trying to come back and win that game in the fourth quarter. So for me, that's our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And that's brought to you by Homefield Apparel, our presenting sponsor in the Back Home Network. Homefield is constantly releasing new schools or updating its products for schools in its existing line. And boy, have they been busy during this college championship run for the football team. But you are bound to find something for you or anyone in your life who just loves great collegiate gear. Not only do you get great quality apparel, but you're supporting an Indiana-based business that has its root in the Kelley School of Business. So go to homefieldapparel.com. Use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off if it's your first order. Whew. Again, that promo code is HOME23 for 15% off. And the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right. In terms of news, I didn't have a whole lot that I found, Jeff, unless maybe you saw anything else out there. The only thing that I really saw since we were together last is that there was reports out that Indiana is in the running for a national top 10 prospect, and her name is Ryan Carter. So even though this year is not going the way we wanted, at least right now on the recruiting scene, things seem to look like they might be heating up. So, but with that, Jeff, I'll turn it over to you for your Marlow's musings.
Kathy, I'm not going to try and be overly negative tonight. I know it's hard because and I'm not going to be sunshine positive either. But I think the thing I take away is these last two games, and my wife Kim and I were talking a little bit about this tonight as we were watching the game, the inability to win at home. And I get it. When you're playing high level teams, it's tough, like Iowa's ranked and stuff. But we got to find a way to get back for any chance for this season to even be managed to be as a average season at this point and stay above 500 for the year. You got to start winning games at home. You're losing Big Ten games at home. I mean, I wasn't expecting to win the Big Ten championship, but we're getting beat by 20 and 25 at home. And again, I'm not trying to preview a number, but I'll go ahead and throw this out there. We allowed Washington to come in and for the game shot 51%. A visiting team comes into your gym and shoots 51%. And it was 60% in the first half. And so I get we're not the biggest team, and I've got something I'll say about that a little bit later as well. But defensively right now, this team just is not locked in, and it shows up. And like I said, the disappointing thing for me, I can handle losing Nebraska on the road. I can handle losing to Michigan State or Illinois on the road. But you got to win games at home, and that's what's really frustrating me.
Right. Yeah. And I'm even forgivable a little bit of losing to Iowa, a really highly ranked, great team coming in, still undefeated in Big Ten play. So really good team. The thing with the Iowa loss for me, Jeff, is that they had them on the ropes, and they just laid an egg again in that third quarter. And you just can't have anything like that in conference play. But tonight, they just didn't look good from beginning to the end, in my opinion. So, which has
too often been the case of late.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. I mean, at least, we have 3 games to talk about. And in my opinion, I thought 2 of the games that felt really promising to me. I know they didn't win. There's no moral victories. It doesn't show up as any special win in the column, even though they lost. But Nebraska and Iowa, I thought they looked good. I thought maybe they had turned the corner. But boy, now they just went right back and reverted right back to where they were before those 2 games here. So they just seems like they have to really get together and figure something out. But Jeff, let's just go ahead and get into it and talk about the Nebraska game. So that game, again, for those who didn't see the final, we lost that game on the road in Nebraska, 73-78. So what kind of things did you see in that game that you want to kind of point out here?
Well, I didn't watch the game. I had a game that night, so I didn't go back and rewatch it after I'd seen the score. But I will say this: you only lost by 5, and we got nothing from Lene. Lene did not score at all. And so that's kind of where the game's like, wow, if Lene just plays her normal game, you win a pretty good game on the road against a ranked opponent that is playing a lot of teams at the upper echelon of the league. Excuse me. At the upper echelon of the league, pretty tough. And that's just, and again, right now, Lene's in a little bit of a slump, I think, because you just really kind of, not finding a rhythm. But I have a couple observations about that when I get to some of the numbers as well. But if Lene kind of plays her normal game, you might have got out of Lincoln with an upset.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that, Jeff. We had Big Z starting again in this, and they just seem to come out with a lot of energy in this game. But to your point, you can't have Lene Beaumont, who, many people are expecting her to be probably the second leading scorer on this team, to go 0 of 7 from the field. And put up those, nothing. So to your point, but a couple things I was able to watch this game. So a couple of things I'll just kind of point out, highlights for me. I thought their first half was better. I know they went into halftime behind, but it was, 30 to 38. So it wasn't awful. Which sounds weird with an 8-point loss, or deficit. But one thing that was different in this game than what we have seen is they had a really great third quarter. They came out and ended up winning that quarter 23-15. We only had 8 turnovers through that 3 quarters. Again, it was just like nothing from Lene, which we already talked about. One thing too, I wanted to point out, I thought Journey Kyaku had a really great defensive game on Britt Prince until that fourth quarter, where it just seemed like Prince just really seemed to come and answer the call for Nebraska. So they went on a 7-0 run that put Nebraska up 65-72 at 2:12 to go. Maya ended up answering. I thought she had a nice game in this one as well. We just couldn't pull it out in the end. And to me, I think it just came down to Britt Prince was just an amazing player for them, along with Petrie. But Prince is in that fourth quarter really came alive. And, Journey, I thought, had done a nice job up until then, but it just seemed like she lost a little steam. And then Nebraska outscored us 25-20 in that fourth quarter. So those were some of the highlights that I saw in that game, Jeff. I don't know if you had anything else you want to add, or do you just want to talk about the game through the numbers?
Yeah, I didn't see it, Kathy, so I can't offer anything more.
Okay, go for it. So what kind of numbers those stuck out to you?
Well, the numbers that kind of stuck out here for me in this game, a positive for me, was only 11 turnovers. And you pointed out, you said the final quarter was 25-20. It was tied going to the fourth quarter. And
Yep.
so they put themselves in a position they just couldn't finish. Okay, fine. You can live with that on the road. I get that. Again, if Lene, I think, plays a normal game, they get out of there with a win. But she didn't, and so you got to live with that. But for me, the 11 turnovers, to me,
Yeah.
I'm going to take the positive there.
Yep, absolutely. The unfortunate thing were those turnovers were a lot of live ball turnovers, and Nebraska really capitalized on them and had 19 points off of them. So yes, I'm super happy to see the numbers come down. It's also the type of turnovers that are really hurting us. Another positive in this game is that we actually out rebounded Nebraska in total, 28-26. And another bugaboo for this team has been second chance points, where we only allowed Nebraska to have 9. Unfortunately, we only had 4. So again, there's, part of that difference. But again, like I trying to find some positives and things in how they played. And especially in this game, I thought there were quite a few positives to take away. Again, they just didn't seem to have quite the firepower that Nebraska did to be able to finish out in the fourth. What are their numbers for you?
Well, looking again, talk about shooting percentage. Go on the road and in Lincoln shoot 51% for the game. And that, that should be a recipe for winning. Now, unfortunately, they did not shoot the 3 very well. And this has kind of become a trend that we've seen here of late. The 3 ball has not been kind to them. I'll come back to it in a couple, when we get to Iowa and tonight. But they only shot 31% from deep. And if you take away Maya McAlusky's 3 for 15, or excuse me, Maya McAlusky is 3 for 5, the rest of the team's 1 for 8. So it is one of those things. So shot well, but didn't really shoot what we kind of assume we're going to shoot well. And so, but that's just kind of the nature of it. And so you like to think you're making some strides there.
Yeah, the interesting thing with that 3-pointer is that, Shay's had an off night in terms of a 3-pointer. But boy, she still managed other ways to score. And that's what I really liked about Shay's game here, especially this year, is that she's not just a 3-point threat, which is what we were kind of expecting when we got her last year to be, that 3-point specialist. And she definitely can shoot the 3. Night, but in this Nebraska game, she really didn't. 1 of 5, but she still managed to get 31 points again on the road. I thought this was just a really great effort from Shay playing off all 40 points. But I think the glaring thing for me in this game, again, in terms of numbers, was the goose egg from Lene. And again, we just don't have any bench production. So unfortunately, this team's just really, really thin. And again, we only played 7 players, for all intents and purposes. Phoenix Stowtime played, but she only played 2 minutes. So we really only had Kyaku and Noyon coming in off the bench, contributing any kind of minutes in terms of numbers. Again, they're just not putting up a whole lot for us. Kyaku had 4 points, and that's all we managed to get from them offensively. So it's just another theme that I think we've seen all year, and it continued on into this game.
Yeah. Now, we did shoot well at the line.
Yeah, they did shoot very well at the line. And this was a rare off night for Shay. I heard that she's, borderline on the 50, 40, 90 club. And so, this was definitely an off night for her at 1 for 5. I don't think, we've seen that a whole lot from her. So, and I have the numbers somewhere. I'll see if I can find them real quick. Well, on the whole, but prior to this game, I looked up and updated her hoop stats numbers, Jeff. And from 3-point, we're actually shooting as a team 35.7, which is 36th in the nation. So it's really not as bad. It's just, unfortunately, it's usually Shay that's keeping that number up for us, and it just didn't happen in this game.
But overall, Shay's in. Again, I really don't. I shouldn't get individuals, but Shay ends up basically 12 for 16 though from inside the arc on against Nebraska. So, Absolutely. With that. So anyway, I don't really have any other numbers I want to look at. Kathy, how about you?
Nope. Let's go on to our Hoosier Hustle. Oh my gosh, game ball. I'm off my game tonight. Speaking of being off our game, so if anyone's looking at our YouTube feed, you can see the numbers on the bottom of the screen there. If not, I'll just let you know. As Shay Chesky is leading the way with 9, Lene Beaumont with 5, and then Big Z and Maya Makaluski both have 1. So Jeff, this feels again like probably a repeat record, but who do you have for your game ball tonight?
I think you got to go with Shea here. I mean, the fact that she put up 31 points on the road in a conference game, was fairly efficient at it. Like I said, with 12 for 21 overall, she was 4 or 5 at the line. She had 4 assists and 2 steals. The drawback was she had 4 turnovers. That's the only negative on the game that I see here for Shea on that and against Nebraska. So I'm going to go with Shea.
Yeah, that was an easy one for me too, Jeff. She was definitely, again, the leader on the floor there for the team, and she ended up playing all 40 minutes too. So clearly the value of Shea Chesky is showing in terms of just the sheer minutes production. And I haven't looked recently, but I'm assuming she's still probably leading the Big Ten in scoring. And this is just another example of why. So yeah, this is a pretty easy one to make unanimous here. So we will move on then to our Grace Berger Hardest Worker Award. So that one's a little bit more spread out than the other one. So Lene Beaumont leads the way with 4, Shea Chesky with 3, Big Z with 2, Odessa Noyan, Makaleski with 2 each as well. And then we have, we have as well Stotine and with 1, and then Caffey with 2. So they're a lot of order. But anyway, a lot of people with different words. So Jeff, this one's a little harder to go to, I guess, especially not having seen it. But who did you feel from your review of the game you think you should get your hardest worker?
Well, I think you look at this and you look at, for example, Nevaeh Caffey had 7 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Maya Makaleski had 12 points and 2 rebounds, but Maya really didn't contribute anything else in the stat sheet. There's no assists, no steals. She only had 1 turnover. So I'm going to go with Big Z here, the 19 points and 11 rebounds. She did have an assist. So I'm going to go Big Z here.
Yeah, Jeff, I agree with everything you said. Maya, I thought, played a fairly decent game, but got in that foul trouble, like you mentioned. She made all of her free throws. I thought, just honorable mention again to Journey, just mainly because of her defense on Britt Prince. Again, I just didn't think she had enough firepower to keep up with her for the fourth quarter there. But yeah, Big Z for me too. And the biggest one for me was the rebounding in this game. This was huge. I thought she had actually a really nice game in this contest, especially in those 11 rebounds. And she did this in only 24 minutes. I think they still have her a bit on a minutes restriction, if you will. I know they won't use those words, but I think they're still limiting her time coming back from injury. So we'll give that to Big Z, and that makes it her 3rd hardest worker for the year. So Jeff, will go back up here, and now let's hit the Iowa game. So I don't know, were you able to see that game? Yep. And if so, what highlights do you have for that one?
Beginning to end. Started out great. Had a 20-8 lead at the end of the first quarter. We're up 35-19 going into the half, and we're still up 47-31 in the third quarter. And I think it was even maybe, no, that was the men's game. I'm sorry. I'm saying, but they were still up 16 in the third quarter, or 15, maybe it was in the third quarter. Or it was 16. Sorry. I'm sorry, Bill. Rick. I'm trying to remember, because I got really frustrated watching this game on Sunday after watching the men kind of do the same exact thing in the second half on Saturday. But then Iowa goes off on a 17-0 run in the third quarter, and Terry doesn't take a timeout. Not a single timeout is taken during that run. It's a 17-0 run, gives Iowa the lead, and then kind of seesaws back and forth a little bit through until about 2.5, 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And then Iowa hits a couple shots. We don't, and you get your margin here at the end. The 56-53 margin, but this was a game they had. It was in their hand, and this part, it's on the players. And I will say this, I was frustrated watching the third quarter with the players because it was bad decisions, bad turnovers, not really getting back defensively, and then also giving up some just slightly open looks, and Iowa finally got hot from 3. But at some point, you have to take a timeout, if not 2. She had 4. It wasn't like she only had a couple left. She had all 4 timeouts left and didn't take a one. That was, to me, that was where the game was. It wasn't at the end. That's when people are going to be like, oh, we missed a shot here. No, the game was there in that run at 17-0.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't watch the game live. I did go back and watch the game. We were actually traveling back from Indiana because we saw the men's game in person on Saturday. So we were driving back from Indiana, so I didn't see it live because of that. However, I did watch it that night. And all I wrote was third quarter grossness again. And I don't know any other way to say it, Jeff, because, you can't, even with a lead, you have a team of Iowa's caliber coming in and you can only put up 4 points in a quarter.
Right.
That's just a recipe for disaster in any venue, whether you're at home or away. And I agree with you, Jeff. I didn't understand. I was yelling the same thing. And it was kind of funny because, like I said, I wasn't watching live and I'm still yelling, take a timeout. Like, what are we doing? Why are we not taking the timeout? And then I think my husband looked at me, he goes, the game's not live. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm still mad. That's just not taking the time. Even if it was live, it wouldn't have mattered that I was yelling. But that was the biggest thing, is like Iowa, I thought, really did a good job of clamping down on Shea in the third quarter. We started turning over, got turnover happy. And then we just, again, couldn't stop Iowa. And our defensive, kind of lack of defense again showed up on that third quarter. And it was just a drastic change from what we had seen in the first quarter. And it was interesting. I listened to me anyway, Coach Morin's interview with Austin on Monday for Inside Indiana. And she had talked about this Iowa game, and how she knew that they were playing so well in the first half. And she just wished that the halftime didn't come, because she just wanted to keep playing, not have this stoppage. And then I wonder, and again, Jeff, you're a coach. I've not been a coach. So what do you do then as a coach to keep that momentum? Because something happened that Iowa was able to turn their momentum around, but we weren't able to keep it. And we come out and we just played an awful third quarter with only 4 points. And I don't know as a coach, but you would think there's something, and this is a theme again, for this team coming out of halftime and just being completely flat. And this is probably one of the worst ones, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a couple different things, but the big thing, take a timeout to break up the momentum of the other team. And while you're in the timeout, draw up something that you can hopefully get a good looking shot, not resulting in a turnover. And again, it all goes back. And I know Terry's used to having, Coach Moore's used to having kind of a veteran team. Maybe they can figure it out.
Yep.
This is not that. Outside of Shea, this is a relatively young, inexperienced team that she's putting out there. They needed help from her.
That's right. That's exactly where, and I was thinking that a little bit in the game tonight as well, where I felt like there could have been some, it's a timeout earlier on. It just feels like she's still coaching in terms of at least taking the timeouts to a team that's a veteran team that have played together for a long time, or at least for more than 1 year. But other than, Shea and Lene, to your point, very few none of the players that are in the rotation now have played together. None of them. Because even some of the other returning players we had, Valisova is gone, so she's not even a factor anymore. And Faith Wiseman didn't play hardly at all last year, and she's playing nothing at all this year. So even the few returning players we have, they're not. There's two of them, and not even. And to be honest, you don't even have that right, because Lene and Shea actually didn't play together because Lene was hurt last year. So none of these players that are in the rotation have played together. So you got to give them a little bit more help, to your point, in taking those timeouts. So, any other overarching themes in this, Jeff, or you want to hit some of the numbers in this one?
I don't really have anything else.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't you go first? What do you have in terms of some of the numbers? I know we've talked a little bit about something.
Speaking of not shooting the three ball very well, we only shot 11%. We were 2 for 19 on threes in this game against Iowa, where if we hit even close to a normal percentage, this game's a win, because you would have been extending the lead, and you didn't. So overall, they end up. Oh, and the other thing, only got to the line 4 times. Yeah. Only four free throws attempts. And that can't happen in a Big Ten game. Yeah.
Yeah. The only bright spot, and I think what, highlighted that to go off of what you're talking about, our field goal percentage in that first half, we shot 45% in the first quarter and 46% in the second quarter. But then we came out in that third quarter. And again, part of it is contributed to Iowa's defense. I really thought Iowa really picked up their defensive intensity in that third quarter, but boy, we just missed some shots that we shouldn't have as well. And went 2 of 13 in the third quarter by itself, including 0 of 6 from 3-point land. So it's just some really bad numbers there in that, again, in that whole third quarter that just kind of up into the game. To your point, it wasn't the fourth quarter because we ended up, 35% field goal percentage in the fourth quarter. It was just that third quarter that just really killed the whole game for them, and they just couldn't come back from that. What else do you have, Jeff?
Rebounding. We actually were even with them in rebounding 40-40, and didn't give up a ton of offensive rebounds, but you just, at times you felt like they got the key rebounds. And that was one of those things that just, it's more about timing than the numbers. But yeah, so overall, a pretty good, solid rebounding day.
Yeah. And to your point, second chance points, we actually won that battle, which I don't think we could hardly say in most of our games this year. And we had 12 second chance points to Iowa's six second chance points. The other thing that I found as well positive in this game is that, we didn't have our bench get completely outscored by Iowa's bench. It was only a 1 point differential, 9 for Iowa and 8 for us. What other points do you have to make?
Well, I really don't have any with the numbers other than that, because I'd have to start getting into some of the individual numbers.
All right.
But overall, I guess you look at some of the kind of analytical numbers, we were winning those. We won second chance points. We won fast break points, unbelievably. And it wasn't that big a difference in points off turnovers, but it just, you felt like after Kathy, you just felt like this is a game that we should have won. This is one that you're going to, even watching it live and still talking about tonight. And I don't know what then see, I'm going to go back and be like, that should have been a W.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one you want back for sure. It was right there for the taking. Real quick before we go into the individual words, just to talk about one other individual that we talked about in the last game with Nebraska. I thought Lene, at least she scored, but she still only gave us 5 points in this game. So definitely, it seems like she's pressing a little bit with her shot and it's getting in her head. Coach Morin did talk about that again with Austin. So she went 2 of 11 in this game. And Coach Moore talked about how they recognize that and they're trying to talk to Lene, not so much about that and trying to get her to focus on other things that she can help the team with, and that her shot will start to come again. And so she's not pressing so hard. But I thought in this game in particular, she was definitely trying to push the issue a little bit with the 2 of 11. And only 5 points for us. But Jeff, let's transition then over to our hardest worker again. So we already talked about the numbers we've given for the season. So why don't you go ahead and tell us who you have for your vote of the hardest worker in this one?
Are we doing game ball or hardest worker?
Game ball. I don't know why I keep saying hardest worker. Sorry.
Game ball here. I'm going to go with Shea. She was not very efficient, though. She did not have her best game of the year. She finished up with 21 points in 38 minutes, and she had 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, but she also had a team high 6 turnovers. So it's hard. If there was really anybody else here, I probably would go that way. But if Shea's not doing what she does, this game could have got kind of ugly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I second you. My vote was for Shea Chesky in this one. I really think that Iowa really made it difficult on her in that second half. I think she only had maybe 4 points in the second half, if I remember correctly. I'm going off of memory, but I know it wasn't a whole lot, and I kept her well under her season average, which is kind of funny that we're talking about a player that scored 21 points having an off night. But yeah, 1 of 10 from 3-point land, and the 6 turnovers. I'm pretty sure I even mentioned that as well to my husband. We were watching the game. I'm like, you just need to have your senior guard doing, leading the way and showing how to take care of the ball. And there's just oftentimes I think Shea gets really sped up and gets careless with the ball, and that led to those 6 turnovers. Yes. But yes, we'll give that to Shea. That is her now 11th game ball out of 18 games. So now we'll for real do hardest worker, Jeff. So who do you have for your hardest worker in this one? I think this one is an interesting one to talk about.
Well, I think you can kind of look at Nevaeh Caffey here, 7 points, 6 rebounds, an assist, and a steal in 32 minutes. But I think I'm going to kind of lean more toward Big Z here with 12 points, 12 rebounds in 29 minutes. And she was 6 of 12 from the field. I'd like to see her be more efficient. But again, nobody was really shooting it well on Sunday.
Yep, I went the same way, Jeff. Another double for Big Z. That was 2 games between Nebraska and this game that she had double doubles. So a nice game from her. Again, still limited in her minutes, only 29. And I also want to again give a nice shout out to Odessa and Journey coming in off of the bench, and each of them giving us 4. It'd be nice if we could get more than that, but I'll take that 8. Like I said, it almost matched Iowa's. Again, Phoenix Stotine just doesn't seem to be in the rotation much. She only had 6 minutes in this game. So, but yeah, we'll give our hardest worker to Big Z, and that gives her her 4th one on the year. All right, boy, we're on a marathon here with covering games. So we will now go back to the game that just finished earlier tonight, which is, to me, is a whole different now animal to talk about, because those last 2 games, I felt like there were, even though there were losses, there were a lot of glimpses of good productivity. There were some nice things that we saw. They just didn't quite have the firepower, the depth to finish this game from the tip. They just didn't seem like they were in it, and ended up losing that game tonight to Washington, 82-63. And to be quite honest, even though a 19-point loss is bad as it is, at one point it was almost 30 points. And Washington kind of put their subs in there a little sooner than we did. We pulled Shea, and I think that actually opened up the floor for some of our other players as well. And when they weren't keying in on her, and they were able to score some to make it a little better than the 30-point loss I thought it was going to be at one point. So, Jeff, why don't you start us off a little bit more? What else was stuck out to you in this game?
Well, you look at this, Kathy, and it really kind of got away toward the end of the first quarter. It was what, it was like a 3 or 4 point game. It was like 15-13, 13-11, somewhere in there like that. Yeah. But by the end of the quarter, it's 24-13. It's 11-point game. We battled them in the second quarter, kind of kept it to a 10-point game. But that little run there at the end of the first quarter, I thought was just really huge. And then the second half, it was kind of the same thing, just pulled away a little bit. Washington made some bigger runs than we did. Washington would go off maybe on a 6-0, 7-0 run. We'd do a 3 or 4-0 run. And so it just kind of felt like you start to get back to, got it down to 10, went back up to like 15 or 16, got it back to 11, went down to 17, 18, back to 12. It just, they just were kind of pulling away over those runs. But tonight they were the better team, and we did not offer up much resistance. I already mentioned the fact that we gave up 50% shooting on our home floor. Yeah,
64% at the end of the day. Jeff, I felt the same way. It didn't start off real great, and it looked like we were going to get back into it. I think it was 13-15 at one point in that first quarter. And then, I got Nebraska on the brain. Washington went on that 9-0 run. Second quarter, like you mentioned, played them even. So some of the things that kind of pointed out for me early on, I thought, and especially in that first quarter, our transition defense was really not good. And we were just having some really untimely turnovers. I think we had 3 within some of our first 3 or 4 possessions, and turnovers continue to be a problem for the rest of the game. I'll go ahead and talk about her now, even though in the last 2 games we gave her our hardest worker. I thought Big Z really, really struggled tonight. She struggled early on. She got her 3rd foul in that second quarter with a charge. I think her first foul was also an offensive foul with a moving screen, which was, oh my gosh, all the moving screens they called in this game tonight in total was clearly something they wanted to make an emphasis on. I think I counted at least 5 that they called in this game between the 2 teams. It was bad, but so Big Z gets that 3rd foul at 6:45, and she essentially sat the rest of the game, or rest of the half. And I had the same thing written down, Jeff, that you talked about. And we came out in the 3rd quarter, and it wasn't bad, but we would start to cut the lead, but boy, our defense was just not there tonight. I just felt like we couldn't deal with Washington's length and their size. And then we just kept seeming to play a really small lineup on top of it. And I felt like that wasn't exactly helping us. I know at one point, we had Shea Chesky out there, Journey Kiaku, and Phoenix Stotine, all 3 of them out on the floor together. And I just thought that was an interesting lineup against a Washington team that had, I thought, some really good size on them. So we were getting pushed around a lot too. Maya Makaleski, I think I saw her on her butt more than I saw her playing good defense. She couldn't get through the screens and she was getting knocked over and she just really was getting pushed around out there. So I thought their size and physicality hurt us a lot in this game as well. We just really couldn't keep up with them. What other themes or things pointed out, Jeff, for you?
Again, I felt like we could have taken a timeout or two in the second half and maybe tried to stop some of those runs, and we didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's keep talking about this game a little bit more. We'll get into some of the team numbers. Jeff, you want to go first with any of the team numbers that you have that jumped out to you?
Again, 15 turnovers. And it wasn't a killer number, but it led to 20 points for Washington.
Yeah. Yep. Type of turnovers again. The biggest one for me, points in the paint. They outscored us 54-20 in the paint. It was a 34-point margin in anything inside. And it looked like we kept trying, even though they were clearly, to me, like had way more length on us and not. And then on top of it, we couldn't stop them in the paints either. We had Ladine for them, went off for 19 points. I guess the positive is that we did stop Sellers on their team. She was averaging close to 20. She only had 11 tonight. So that was it. But boy, points in the paint, that's really bad. 34-point differential is really a bad recipe. What number is next for you, Jeff?
Well, we talked about shooting tonight. Shot the three pretty well. 12 of 23, 52% from the field or from the three. But again, like I mentioned earlier, Washington was shooting, not as many threes, but they shot 55%. They shot, in fact, their overall game field goal percentage ended up being 64%. I was wrong. I said 64% for the game at our gym. So those kind of things, we shot pretty well, but you let the other team shoot fantastic.
That's right. And to me, I think a lot of this because we just could not stop Washington from getting the ball in the paint, like I had already mentioned. But then on top of it, I thought our transition defense was really bad, and that turns up in the numbers as well. So it passes the eye test and the numbers test. They had 23 fast break points to our 3. So again, another huge differential in there, which it's another 20 points, which is a huge part. 23 of those. 54 of their points in the paint then were off a fast break, which is 23 points. So it wasn't even just that we couldn't stop them, in our half court defense. We couldn't stop them on the transition defense off of missed baskets and off of the turnovers. It was just they just had our number for sure. What else, Jeff? What do you have?
I don't have any other team numbers here.
Yeah, I'm looking real quick. I think those were
got out rebounded 32-20.
There you go. And we always usually talk about second chance points. It wasn't as bad as usual. We did get 13-8 was the differential in that in Washington's favor. But again, you're letting somebody shoot 64%. They don't really have much of an opportunity to get second chance points. So there's that. All right. Any other numbers? You said, no, I'm good. So we were going to go on to game ball. I got it right this time. So we'll go on to game ball in this one. Jeff, who is your game ball vote for tonight?
Well, I'm going to go again, the Shea Chesky Award here. Shea with the 23 points. She was 7-11 from deep. Now, this is opposite. She was 7-11 from deep, but she was only 1 for 7 inside the arc tonight. But she was doing everything she could to carry this offense tonight. And unfortunately, but the problem was she only got 1 rebound. She didn't have an assist. She didn't have a steal, 2 turnovers. But without Shea Chesky's offense tonight, this game would have got really ugly. Yeah,
absolutely, Jeff. We'll make that again unanimous, giving Shea her now 12th out of 19 game balls on the year. And the other high on her in the last 2 games. So I want to highlight a positive here. She only had two turnovers. So the team had 15 and only 2 from her. So again, this game's not anywhere close. She had very little help in this game at all, in my opinion. So we'll give that to Shea Chesky for her game ball. So how about for hardest worker, Jeff? I have a thought in my brain, but what's in yours?
I will mention Nevaeh Caffey here because she had 8 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal in 36 minutes. And that's kind of where I was kind of leaning. But it's hard to look at somebody like Maya McAlusky tonight, 16 points, very efficient, 6 of 9 overall, 4 of 7 from beyond the arc. And she had 2 rebounds. and she had and 2 rebounds. So a tight one here, but I'm going to go with Maya McAlusky here.
Yeah. Jeff, you had the same exact 2 people I did as well, Maya McAlusky and Nevaeh Caffey. And, in our group text, I even alluded to, I really thought Maya McAlusky actually deserved more playing time in this game. She ended up only playing 29 minutes. I didn't understand why she wasn't out there. Like I mentioned, we had that lineup where we were playing really, really small. The only thing I could think of, she was just really getting pushed around a lot on defense. And so that maybe that was it. But to be honest, I didn't think anyone was playing that great of defense. And I think it would have been, in my opinion, a better trade-off to have her out there for her offensive firepower because we didn't have anyone else. Nevaeh Caffey had some nice drives to the basket. Lene had a slightly better night tonight with 9 points, so good for her. Big Z already talked about. This was just a really bad game for her. And then beyond that, you got 3 points off your bench. So that was my only thing with why I thought Maya, even though I get it, she was getting pushed around on defense, and I know that everyone's on defense, but no one was playing great defense tonight. So I wish we could have countered a little bit with more offensive power with her out there. But regardless, we will give her our hardest worker award tonight, and that is her 3rd on the year. All right, Jeff, we got through our marathon of all of the games. Now we have a marathon of around the Big Ten. So we have, I think I heard 7 or maybe 8 teams that are ranked in the Big Ten. I haven't looked at the rankings here this week really closely, but we have some big games on Sunday. So I'll just flow through these real quick. So actually an upset game, number 21 USC lost. That was on the road, at least to Minnesota, 62-63. So a close one. Then we had 2 road teams win. Ohio State, the 19th ranked, went on the road and beat and upset number 7 Maryland 89-76. So not even real close on that one. Ohio State, by the way, is our next opponent. Sunday, the 11th as well, 4 UCLA went on the road and beat Nebraska, who is ranked 20th, 83-61. No surprise on that one there. And then if you're looking for some more ranked matchups coming up on Thursday, Nebraska is at Michigan State. Maryland is at USC. And then this coming Sunday, the 18th, Maryland goes on the road to UCLA. Michigan State goes on the road to Iowa. And then Monday, the 19th, I'm sure we're all going to be watching women's basketball, right, on Monday. But if you want to record them and watch them on Tuesday, Ohio State will be at TCU, interesting, and Michigan at Vanderbilt. TCU is ranked number 13 and Vanderbilt is ranked number 7. So some interesting non-conference ranked matchups there for Ohio State and Michigan. During our game was at halftime, I looked it up, so I didn't update these if there were other games going on, but UCLA and Iowa are still tied at the top of the Big Ten with 5-0. And then we have 3 teams after that at 5-1. Normally we'd preview an opponent, but we don't have any, Jeff. So any thoughts on the Big Ten? I'll be honest, I haven't caught a whole lot of games. I've been really busy this year. So outside Indiana's games, I haven't seen a whole lot. I've seen a little bit of Iowa. I've seen a little bit of UCLA, and that's about it. But how about you? Any thoughts on the Big Ten?
Kind of shaping up the way we kind of thought. I mean, Iowa maybe being undefeated and at the top of the league right now, still kind of a little bit of a like, ooh, okay. But UCLA being undefeated at the top of the league is not a surprise. Then you've got the jumble of 5-6 teams that are right there with 1 loss. So I'm not surprised by it. Though what's shocking is how badly we've played. I do want to go real back. I probably should save this final thoughts, but kind of go back to my thoughts on Big Z. I know she had a couple decent games, but again, she can't disappear on you. And tonight she disappeared. And I'm not blaming it for the loss, but there's too much inconsistency for me right now. And I want to see more consistency.
Yeah. And I don't know how much of that was because of her injury, because we saw a little bit of that before. I also wonder, Jeff, of how the lack of getting any experience when she was at UCLA and the lack of playing time might have, slowed her development down a little bit too. I wonder in my head, you see flashes of her and I can see why they're really high on her. She's just not there. We had 2 nice games from her, like you mentioned, really bad game from her tonight. And so, that's kind of where we're at. Jeff, there's some numbers in here I pulled for Indiana. We can talk about them if you want. If not, you can hit the Bob Thompson music and we can give our final thoughts.
Now, if you want to get the numbers real quick, Kathy, we can.
Sure. Yeah, real quick. So this was before the game tonight. I didn't have a chance to, I don't know how fast they get updated. So anyway, in the net ranking, we're at 54th and her hoop stat at 41st. Interesting, even with all the losses, that hasn't moved a whole lot. Right around that same area. Points per game, we're at 71 now per game, which is now dipped into 101. And we're giving up 65.7. So we're up to 219th in that, or down to rather. Field goal percentage, interesting, still 20th in the nation at 47%, 35.7. But then I pulled some of the numbers as to, if you look at shooting wise, you'd think, oh, well, we must be really close in some of these games. We're getting blown out. We're not contributing with assists like we usually do. We're 12.3 assists, which is only 240th in the nation. Our rebounding margin is now almost a 2 per game. It keeps going down. And then our turnovers, 14.5, which is 75th in the nation, which isn't, it's not great, but I guess it could be worse. We're not forcing any turnovers. So our defense is just not there. 13.2, which is 341st in her hoop stat. So to me, those are the big glaring ones, is our rebounding and not forcing any turnovers and the lack of assists. So those are some of our updated numbers for our team so far this year. All right, Jeff, we have final thoughts now, so you can go first on your final thoughts.
Thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Not much to say here right now. It's first of all, I think as fans, this is not fun. It is not fun to see them going through a stretch like this. Never thought, I should say, we never foresaw this. We started the show. We never, we didn't imagine a 7-game losing streak in the Big Ten, and really, and I can't remember exactly how many. I think it's 6 in a row now. We were 11-2 at one point, so 6 in a row.
Yeah.
So it's just. But you got to find a way to fight through it and pick up a handful of wins. They're not going to finish 500 in the league. We know that. I'm not going to act like they're going to go 12-3 the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Or 12-2 the rest of the way. But you got to find a way. Or excuse me, 10-2, I guess. 10-2. Yeah. Or 9-2, whatever.
Yeah.
My math's bad because they only play 18 games. So 9-2. They're not going 9-2 the rest of the way.
Yeah.
So, but you got to find a way to pick up a handful of wins. And then that also is, you talk about recruiting earlier. First of all, the recruits have to actually show up on campus. In this day and age, there's no guarantee they're not going to opt out at some point later in the spring or in the summer. And now you also got to be, to a certain degree, you got to keep Maya McAlusky in town. You got to keep Nevaeh Caffey. You got to keep Lene Beaumont, because we saw what happened last year. We had a mass exodus out, and that was a team that we, again, everybody transfers for their own reasons, and there may have been some things going on in the locker room, but those kids have gone off and done some pretty decent things at their new schools. And I could see, so it's really important. If you want to hype the recruiting, fine, but you also have to keep Lene Beaumont. You have to keep McAlusky. You have to keep Caffey in the system here, and then pick up maybe a few in the portal as well. But yeah, this is not only just about trying to win some games. This is about trying to keep your core together as well.
That's right. And, one thing we didn't point out, sorry, Jeff, were you done with yours? Were you all done with your final thoughts? Great. Okay.
I'm done.
The one thing I meant to highlight in the last game tonight with Washington is, once the game kind of got out of control, well, it was out of control most of the time, but she finally towards the end of the game, and she didn't play the entire 40 minutes or 38 minutes or whatever. And I would like to see a little more of that. And again, I don't know how you say that I don't want them to think that I just expect they're giving up in the fourth quarter, but at some point you got to realize and be realistic that the game is gone, and you need to start getting people in off of the bench. And we're just not doing that. And to your point, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about Faith Wiseman not stick around. She hasn't played now, and I'm not hearing anything about her being injured. I'm concerned about her not being able to stay, and she was supposed to be some of our pipeline. And, we have Chloe Spreen out there as well. And to your point, even the people that are playing and contributing, you got to find a way to make sure they stay, because we are seeing the lack of consistency in the program now from last year to this year in terms of the roster and how none of these players play together and they're just not gelling right now together either. And they're so young, right? And so I'd like to give some of those young people some experience, and hopefully you can convince them to come back, and you get a few extra, maybe some more veteran people in the portal next year instead of a whole bunch of mainly sophomores and juniors and mainly sophomores in the portal. And then we get some, we have some freshmen coming in next year, and then hopefully we get a few more recruits and we can, see some light at the end of this tunnel. But I agree, right now you're not worrying about going for 500, but you can still get into the Big Ten tournament and have some kind of postseason play. And to me, that might be something that you start making your new goal and reshift your goal on the year. So the NCAA tournament, now let's at least make the Big Ten tournament and end on a positive note and end the season on a positive note.
Yep.
So those are my final thoughts, Jeff. So up next, obviously, as I mentioned at the top of the program, we are not highlighting our next opponent. So Jeff and I will return a week from today on Wednesday, January 21st. And that is when we will preview our next opponent, which is Ohio State. And that game will be on Thursday. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@BackHomeNetwork. You can also be part of our private community. Find out more at assemblycalls.substack.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logos, and a big thank you to Bob Thompson for the music you heard throughout the broadcast. Most of all, thank you all for listening, whether you're listening to us live or after the fact. We appreciate every one of you, and we will be back to talk about IU hoops next week. And until then, keep your elbow in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. All right. Good deal. Big weekend's coming up, or big Monday, I guess. So big weekend for me personally, and Monday be a big day for everybody. So do you have any kind of plans, Jeff, to go watch the game, or are you going to hunker down at your house and watch it in?
We just watch at home. We don't, there's not going to be any place up here having a watch party.
No.
Yeah. No, nobody up here is going to have a watch party.
You're up north, but you're still in Indiana, so never know.
Enjoy your game at Hard Rock.
I will. I got my tickets officially today, so I'm pretty excited.
Yes.
So. Yes. All right. Well, Jeff, I will have us get out of here, and I will talk to you on Wednesday. Hopefully we'll have some positive.
Good night, everybody.
Talk to the next one. So take care.